Here is step one of my sourdough secrets. Every month I make 10 loaves for the family, put them in the freezer. All month long we get to eat sourdough. Here's the last crumbs of what we got going on. We eat a lot of sourdough in this household, and I like to make it easy, simple, fast. I don't want to do a lot of work, and delicious. Delicious and organic too, and healthy. I've had so many people asking me, how do you make your sourdough, that I decided finally I'm gonna put together some videos, and you're gonna watch this video and you're gonna be like, yeah, that's amazing. So let's get to it. This is all you really need if you wanna make sourdough. A scale, it helps a lot. Some jars, that's a mason jar. Here's the jars I use. It's nice, fancy, you don't need this. And an oven where the bread's gonna go cook in the oven. As long as you got your scale, your jar in the oven, you're good to go. You need your flour, your water, and your salt too. Flour, water, salt. Isn't it amazing? Isn't it amazing? Flour, water, and salt, the most basic things on the planet, can just come together and make delicious, delicious food that we can eat basically every single day. And people have been doing this a long time, I might add. So, step one, and this, in my opinion, was one of the hardest steps. It's not something I've done a lot, and that's because you don't have to do it a lot. Once you make your starter, then you throw it in the fridge. We'll get to that in later steps, and it's good to go. You got starter for a long time. But how do you get that starter? Now, hold on a second. I'm gonna run to the closet, and I'm gonna show you guys something really special here. Yeah, I'm running to the closet. You can't even see me on the screen. Look at this. This is something quite magical. That is some sourdough starter for your starter. This is a really easy way to jumpstart your starter, and if you have some of this lying around, it's recommended. Just do it the easy way. It's the same process, but this is gonna speed it all up because you're gonna start with yeast. Now, I think this is a little secret that I don't think you're gonna learn from a lot of other sourdough YouTubers, sourtubers out there. Yeah, I'm talking to you, sourtube. You get some instant quick yeast, just a normal, any old kind of yeast, and it's basically as good as this. You know, they talk about, this one says Alaska, or you can buy the San Francisco one, or you can buy the Idaho sourdough, or maybe you get some from Ukraine or something. That'd be amazing. What I've read on the topic is that most of the yeast and bacteria are coming straight from your flour anyways. So you are gonna develop your own culture. You don't need these things. And even if you start with this, probably because of my environment here is different from Alaska, the humidity, the things that grow here, all of it's different, that this is eventually gonna kind of disappear. Now, you might be playing Darwin, you might be enjoying a little natural selection experiment inside your jar, finding out what grows best. And then get this thing is amazing. I heard, now I didn't actually read all the research here, but what they say is that the baker's hands get cultured with the same yeast and stuff that are gonna be in your sourdough starter. And so there's a symbiotic relationship between human bacteria, yeast, and your food, that it's all just living off of each other. It's gonna just culture your whole world. It'll get inside your brain and make you think these beautiful thoughts about how wonderful it is to be healthy, and you're gonna love that part. But we'll get there eventually. Don't get too excited yet. This is just the first step. This is gonna be the hard part, of just starting from straight up flour, and the yeast and the bacteria that are gonna grow to give you the wonderful sourdough are just gonna come out of the air, off of your hands, out of your water, but most importantly, out of your flour. I'm always going with organic flour, and I recommend starting with rye. This is what the people on the internet say, that the rye flour has the most nutrients that these bacteria and yeast want, and that's great. I think whole wheat flour works basically just as well. And then the white flour, though, you do notice a difference. White flour doesn't want to have the same kind of oomph full of yeast and bacteria that are good stuff. Now, you're also going to be growing some bacteria that are not good things, that you don't want. And so this is the only step where I actually do sourdough discard. I know there's lots of stuff out there about discard. You feed your sourdough and then you discard some, and some people throw it away or they use it on a discard recipe. I don't ever discard stuff. I just make what I need. I'll get all those steps. The only time I do it is this very first step, because I might be growing some things that are a little funky. And one of those things that's funky is whatever it is that smells like gym socks. I think smelling your sourdough is really important. I'm gonna make another video about smelling your sourdough. It's one of the key things that I don't see people talking about. If it smells like dirty socks, that's something you don't want to grow. You don't want to be just culturing jars and jars full of smelly, dirty socks. So you're going to be discarding that. Hopefully you don't get to that level, but there might be some of that stuff that's trying to compete with your happy, wonderful, loving yeasts and bacteria. And so that's why we're going to do some discards. Step one, you're going to weigh out your stuff. You get your scale, you get your thing. Do a 50-50 mix. So whatever that is, I don't overdo it. I think we're gonna do about 20 grams. Let's see, 7 and 20. 7 and 20. I just 2 scoops and I estimate out to exactly 20 grams of flour. Then you're gonna get your 20 grams of water. Like I said, I don't overdo it. I'm not going to throw in 100 and 100 because you don't want that much. You don't need that much. I don't even need to use this on the first round. I'm using this tiny little dinky thing. Let me see if I can do this real quick. And 25, 39. We'll go 39. Or I can just use my spoon and drop 40. Okay, I'm going to stir it up. And then I'm just going to set this aside. Now, one of the things about sourdough, if you read all the stuff, is about timing. And of course, if you wanted a bakery, you got to time it well because your bakery's open certain hours and you got to have the bread ready for the customers. Now, we also have busy schedules in our lives, so timing may be important, but the more you can have some flexibility with your sourdough and just kind of look at it and see what it's doing and get to know it, develop a relationship with your yeast. The better you are acquainted with your yeast, where you know its backstory, its origin story, its history, its fears, its loves, what makes it feel comfortable when it goes to bed at night. Those are the kinds of things you want to know about your yeast. And when you can get there, then you don't have to worry so much about timing. That's all I'm saying. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this out and I'll record a couple check-ins, which will cut and you'll get to see right away. For me, I actually have to live through my life as it happens in real time, but you'll just see it as like jump and you'll be there. And we're going to check in maybe in a few hours, maybe in a day. But what I want to start to see is this is going to start to rise. And if you can kind of see it on the side here, you'll see this grow. This line will come up and then we'll see bubbles. Okay, we want the bubbles, and what we're going to do is we're going to wait for those bubbles, and then when we get a good amount of bubbles, we're going to discard pretty quick. Some people say you kind of want to wait this long for this. Let's not overcomplicate it. It's gonna get some bubbles. I'm pretty sure when it gets some bubbles, that is things growing in it. We're gonna start discarding and refeeding. Here's the challenge. What you want to do is you want to feed it long enough for enough bacteria and yeast and happy things to be alive in there, so that when you refeed it, you're building your colony. You really want to nurture your little colony of organisms in here. But if you wait too long, then things start to get weird in the environment. They pollute their own environment because they're pooping out the alcohols and the vinegars and weird things that are changing the whole environment. And then they start, nuclear war breaks out, they fight with each other, and then you get some bad actors in there. So you don't want to wait too long. We'll follow up in the next video and you will see the exact results. I'm back and we have growth, we have bubbles. See if we can see that up close. So it has been just less than 2 days. Yesterday was day 1 and I checked it all through the day. No growth, no change, looked exactly the same. Maybe smelled a little bit different, but by nighttime, so that would have been almost a day and a half at that point. But still, there was no bubbles, and I just let it sit. I didn't film any kind of update. So you have to have some patience. You have to let things happen as they're gonna happen. Cause boom, I woke up this morning and bubbles. Yeah, it looks really great here. So something's growing. Something is growing. Flour doesn't just start bubbling on its own. Water doesn't just bubble on its own. That's all that's in here. Rye flour and water, remember. And remember, it was 20 grams of each. I'm going with grams here. I took a smell already, but let's do it again. It smells gross. It smells gross. You know what it almost smells a little mildewy, like a damp corner of the room that's something's just been sitting there a while. Does not smell like yeast yet. And that's what we want. We want it to, not right now. What we want is it to smell good, like yeast and stuff like that. But don't worry. This is where we need to have faith in the process. We need to just trust the process. So right around this 2-day mark, that's when I'm seeing my bubbles. That's when I'm gonna feed it. Like I said before, I'm gonna do some discard because this smells gross. There's nothing I wanna do with this. I don't need a lot of it. I'm gonna throw some out. I like working with these small amounts. I got a small jar, small amount in here. You just don't need to overdo it. Also, I gotta say, starting it with the rye, I think I just get so much better results. Starting it with like a white flour as your base for your very first beginning of the starter is not something I recommend. Whole wheat I think is fine. But I'm gonna take half of it out. So my scale, it goes negative actually. So I can just take some out and throw it in the trash and it'll say -20. And that'll be about half. I might have done a little more than half there. Negative 18. Oh, a little bit more. -20 on there. So I'm taking half, and then what I'm gonna do is another 20 and 20. So this time it's actually gonna come up to 60. Total volume would be 60. And that's all I'm gonna do. And then I'm gonna let it sit again. And probably this time, it won't be 2 days, it'll probably be about a day. But what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna keep on feeding this beast until I get to the point where I got a really nice culture in there, where it is just making a nice smell, where it's bubbling up quick. I'm assuming the whole thing's gonna work at this point because like I said, I haven't done this a lot of times and it's kind of pain. I don't wanna do it. I don't like to do it. I have living starter in my fridge that I could be using. I'm just doing this for you guys. Because I love you. Look at that. The tortures, the suffering I put myself through for you. I hope you appreciate it. Hey, maybe you know what? Hit the like button. That's one way of just showing that this actually matters to you, that you care. I don't care. You don't have to hit the like button. It's up to you. It does. It's just a digital piece of data on the internet that's storing some data about your behavior in response to this digital stimulation. The weird world we live in. I'm just chattering away while I'm stirring. So there was 20 left in there of the starter, 20 more of the flour, 20 more of water. I did measure it out. I was chattering while I was doing it, but I swear I did it. And there we go. I smell it now. It just smells like rye flour. It does not smell dank dungeon smell anymore. It just smells like rye flour again. I like the smell. Nice stone ground. I can smell the stone ground smell of it. Looks pretty. There you go. And once again, what am I looking for? Bubbles. And I'm just gonna let this sit for another day. By the way, I'm just leaving it at room temperature here. It's probably 70-ish degrees in the house. It's wintertime, we have the heat on. And so it stays pretty consistent at 70 degrees. If you were doing this, I don't know, if you don't have heating or cooling in your house and it's winter or summer, you might have to find a place in the house where it's about 70. If it's cooler, the whole thing takes longer. If it's hotter, it goes faster. The temperature does vary on the selection process because certain organisms like it hotter and certain ones like it cooler. So you actually get an interestingly different blend of sourdough animals. It's fun to call them animals. They're not animals, yeast and bacteria. But what if they were little animals in there? That would be fun too. You might get some different stuff depending on the temperature. That's about all you need to know. I'm gonna set this aside and then poof, here it is. It's been 24 hours since that last update, and I'm also gonna flash a picture on the screen of what it looked like last night. So it only took about 12 hours after that last update for it to totally puff up, double in size, I would say. We could take a look at the before and after, and lots and lots of bubbles. I took a sniff when I took this picture. Still smelled kind of like mildew, kind of damp and not delicious yet. It started to smell a little better as right before bedtime, and then it's actually starting to get a little bit of that fruity smell. I think it's pretty good. If you actually look in the middle, I don't know if you can see it, it's actually started to collapse back down. So what happened is it rose up, made all these nice bubbles, and then some of those bubbles are popping now. Because I had that kind of damp smell yesterday. It actually smells good now. I would say this is something that smells good to eat, but because I had that yesterday, I'm still gonna throw away. So I'm gonna take this back down to 20, throw 40 of it away, which is sad. I'll throw in the compost this time. Yesterday I threw in the trash. But compost. I do have a compost pile. I don't know why I didn't think of that, but rebuild it back up to 60 like I did in the last video, and then I think it's probably ready to use after that. I know when I've done it with white flour, man, it's miserable. And what's miserable is that it takes all this patience. You don't know if it's coming, and then you kind of get some bad smells and bad growth, and if you don't do the timing right, you get impatient. And I've just had bad things grow, and then if you get like liquid on top, you've gone the wrong direction. Maybe just need to start over again. I don't know why it's so hard sometimes, but this one's been really, really easy. So we'll see. Good enough. Just mix it right up. I'm gonna let this one sit probably another about 24 hours. I hope you're having fun. I hope you're following along. You've made your sourdough, and it's that easy. Do not give up hope. This is the time to have patience. A little life lesson here, because as you can see, if you're looking closely, I didn't actually get as much rise this time. Not as many bubbles. Last time it really puffed up. It was probably about that high. This time about 2/3 that distance. And it took a while. This is 24 hours since the last video, but here's the key. It smells better. It's starting to smell like the real deal. It's starting to smell a little bit sour, just a little bit fruity and a little bit sour. And that's the right stuff. Maybe a tiny bit of that dank smell that I was talking about before, but it's getting less and I'm getting a better smell. And so what I think this means is that we have more of the good stuff growing and less of the bad stuff. I have read that some of the stuff that makes those gross smells that you don't want, that start in the very beginning, are some bacteria that also produce bubbles. So not all the bubbles are good in the beginning, and that's why I think we've seen a little decrease in the bubbles. This is one of the reasons why I've been so frustrated making my own starter in the past, is because it can be really frustrating to see some results and then they go away and you don't know what's going on. Let's try to think about it a little bit from the scientific perspective. Is that you have a bunch of different things, and what happens eventually is that the yeast are growing really fast, and they're growing. You get a lot of yeast, so as soon as you feed them, it's like boom, they're hungry. The yeast make alcohol, which that's their byproduct, and the alcohol actually kills a lot of different things. The molds and mildews and things that you don't want. Some of the bad bacterias. The alcohol makes it a hostile environment for a lot of things to grow, but not the bacteria that make it sour, like the lactobacillus that make it get that nice, delicious sour taste and sour smell. Those actually can grow just fine in the alcohol environment. And then, of course, those produce different acids, one of them being like a vinegar that the yeast can actually live in as well. Although eventually, I guess if you leave it really long, the whole thing turns again into something different and it gets really gross again. So you're creating an environment that's hostile towards the things you don't want and deliciously beneficial to everything that you do want. And that's what we're trying to create in here with lots of the organisms so they can outcompete anything that we don't want. I hope I explained that well, but I think that's what we're going for, and I think that's what I'm really starting to get here. It takes patience at this stage. That's why I say it's that life lesson, that the false hope. We thought we were there. We really weren't. We thought that was the top of the mountain. There's actually a little bit further to go. We're gonna make it though. I promise. Actually, I don't even know because I can't predict the future. Maybe tomorrow this is gonna be disgusting. I hope we're gonna get there. Let's hope together. I hope you're following along with me, but don't give up hope. And especially if you're starting to get a better smell at this point, and the smells are subtle, by the way. It's not like it's wafting through the air. And so this is it. I'm gonna do the same thing as I did before. I'm gonna throw away 2/3 of it. So 40 grams out of the total 60 that should be in here. That'll leave 20 of starter, 20 of flour, 20 of water. Now tomorrow, we'll check it again. If it's still giving us this kind of weak growth, hey, we might need to do this for a few more days still. If, on the other hand, I'm starting to really see something nice, beautiful, smells amazing, then I know, boom, I've got my starter and I can start using it to make some bread, which is going to be another amazing video. I promise. We'll get to the good stuff. Now, remember, like I did say in the beginning, if you start with one of those sourdough starter packets, of course, you'd probably already be done by now and you'd be on to the next video making bread. The steps are all the same. It just goes faster. And what are we gonna do? We're gonna leave it for another day. You don't wanna let it go maybe more than about a day and a half. There we go. Fresh. Smells like flour again. That's how I want it to smell. And you'll see. And here you go. It's the next day. I got some kids making noise in the background, but just a quick update. Nothing really changes today. We're gonna do the same thing we did yesterday. I'm gonna feed it, and then I'm gonna give you another update. So let's go. And there you go. Basically, when I checked it this morning, it looked maybe a little bit more bubbles than yesterday, and the smell, I think, is improving still. Right now it smells like flour, but this morning it smelled a little bit sour and none of the bad smells. So I think we're making some slow improvements, but basically we're just gonna keep feeding it until it is nice and vibrant and strong and vigorous, and it just blows up when you feed it. So now I'm just gonna fast forward a bit, so you don't need to see a video for each single one, but we're doing the same. I thought on day 6 it looked pretty good, but it also could be better. So somewhere after about day 6 is when you can start using it. The reason we're still just feeding and discarding is to get it really vibrant and healthy and alive and full of bubbles and joy and all that stuff. So this is day 11 and I'm gonna show it to you now. This is what I'm working with now. And I think you can tell, I can tell anyways, that this actually has more bubbles and more rise to it than that day 6 version. Maybe I can do a little split screenshot between the two right there. So going those extra few days definitely makes a difference to get even more vibrancy and aliveness in the starter. But by now, day 11, I'm calling it. It's good. This is good. This is definitely good. It has a nice smell. It smells yeasty to me. It smells yeasty and bread-like right now. Not a lot of sour in it right now, but that's okay. I'll say also, when I was doing this, I skipped a few days here or there of feeds, so going 48 hours instead of 24, and I think that might have helped. If you want to go more like 48, it just gives it extra time for it to grow in there. And as you see, I've also already started using it. So I took some of this and I've started adding, and you can't see the bubbles on the side here, but if we can get a shot looking inside, look at that goopy goop. Yeah, it's all goopy. So this is actually the starter for my bread, and I'm going to go through that process, but I did use this exact starter that came out of thin air into this new starter. This has got a mix of white flour in there now because we were out of bread in the family and I got to get going and I didn't have time to film the video and all that. I'm going to make my bread because I don't want my kids to starve. But I'll show you the process of how I did this as well, and this is just to show you that it is working, it is alive. This, I don't think I need to anymore go through that process of feeding it every day. This is exactly what I want. And I'll say this has the yeasty smell and the fruity smell. It smells sweet, it smells delicious. I can tell this is really alive, it's bubbling. This is good. What I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna increase this one more time, because I make 2 jars of these, 2 full jars of these for 10 loaves of bread. And I will go through that process. Hey, I think for this video, we're done. I made sourdough starter using flour, and water, air, a knife, a jar, a scale, and that's it. And that's that easy. I wanna make sure that you do this now. Don't just watch the video, get your supplies out, get your jar, get your flour, get your water, make it. If you have some problems or questions, leave a comment, send me a message. I want to walk you through it. I want to help you do this. That's the most important thing, is that you're actually doing this. I've told lots of people I make sourdough and they think it's amazing. They say, oh, I want to do that. And then they never do it. And it kind of frustrates me that they don't just do it, because it's so delicious. It's supposedly healthy. It's a lot of fun. And what an amazing way to just make your own food. Please do it. Please also share this with someone else that says that to you. They say, sourdough? I want to do that. Share them this video. They can get started. We can spread the sourdough all around the world. Love your sourdough. Give it a big hug when it's time, when it's ready. Give it all the love in your heart. And I'll see you in the bread making video.